Love triangle. My husband decided to go for an open marriage and invited another woman to live with us. What I told him about it. Charlotte sat curled up on the living room sofa, a book forgotten in her lap, as the autumn sun dipped below the horizon. The house, usually filled with the comforting sounds of Mark's presence, felt unusually still. Mark had been increasingly distant, lost in thoughts he didn't share. Tonight, he promised a talk, a serious one, judging by his tone. The clock ticked loudly, marking the seconds until his return. When the front door finally opened, Charlotte's heart skipped a beat. Mark stepped in, his face a complex tapestry of emotions. "Charlotte, we need to talk," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. She nodded, closing her book. "I'm all ears," she said, trying to mask her growing apprehension. Mark took a deep breath. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about us, about our marriage," he began, pacing the room. "I love you, you know that, but I feel like something's missing from me." Charlotte's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" He stopped, turning to face her. "I believe that bringing another person into our relationship could enrich our lives, give us new perspectives, new experiences." Charlotte blinked, struggling to process his words. "Another person? You mean, like an open marriage?" "Yes, exactly," Mark said, a flicker of hope in his eyes. "I've even met someone. Elisa. She's incredible, Charlotte, and I think you'll like her." The room seemed to spin around her. "You want to bring another woman into our marriage? Into our home?" Her voice was a mix of disbelief and hurt. "I know it's a lot to take in," Mark said, taking a step toward her. "But I believe this can work, for all of us. I want us to meet her together." Before Charlotte could respond, the doorbell rang. It was as if the universe itself was conspiring to rush her into this new reality. Mark glanced at her, an unspoken plea in his eyes, before going to the door. Charlotte's heart pounded as she heard murmurs of greeting. She stood up, smoothing her dress, a part of her wanting to flee, yet curiosity rooted her to the spot. Elisa walked into the room, and Charlotte couldn't help but take in her appearance. She was striking, with a warm smile that didn't quite reach her nervous eyes. "Hi, I'm Elisa," she said softly, extending a hand. Charlotte shook it, feeling a strange sense of unreality. "Charlotte." Mark watched them, his expression a mix of anxiety and hope. "I thought we could all have dinner together, talk things through." Charlotte nodded mechanically. The evening unfolded like a surreal play, with each of them playing their part. Elisa was polite, insightful, and there was an undeniable charisma about her. Charlotte oscillated between fascination and a deep sense of unease. As they ate, the conversation flowed awkwardly, topics skirting around the elephant in the room. Charlotte observed Mark and Elisa, their easy rapport, and felt a pang of something she couldn't quite name. Later, as Elisa left and Mark turned to her, full of questions in his eyes, Charlotte realized her life had irrevocably changed. This wasn't just a dinner, it was the opening chapter of a new, uncertain journey. And whether she was ready or not, the story had already begun. The days following the dinner with Elisa were a blur for Charlotte. She found herself moving through the motions of her life, each task tinged with a surreal quality. Mark was more animated than she had seen him in months, his enthusiasm about the new arrangement with Elisa often leaving Charlotte feeling like a spectator in her own marriage. The decision to have Elisa move in happened quicker than Charlotte had anticipated. Mark was convinced that it was the best way forward, and despite her reservations, Charlotte found herself agreeing, albeit hesitantly. She couldn't ignore the nagging voice in her head that whispered of potential heartache, but another part of her was curious about the possibilities this change could bring. Elisa's arrival brought a new energy into their home. She was considerate, often going out of her way to make Charlotte feel comfortable. Yet, Charlotte couldn't help but feel a twinge of jealousy seeing her in their space, interacting with Mark in a way that was both familiar and foreign. Their daily routines shifted to accommodate their new housemate. Breakfasts were now a time for shared conversations, a stark contrast to the quiet, often rushed mornings Charlotte and Mark used to have. Elisa was a good listener, her insightful comments often leading to deeper discussions. Charlotte found herself looking forward to these morning interactions, though she wasn't sure why. However, the evenings were harder. Mark and Elisa would often cook together, their laughter and chatter drifting into the living room where Charlotte sat, feeling like an intruder in her own kitchen. She tried to join them, to be part of this new dynamic, but it felt forced, leaving her more alienated. The most challenging part was the nights. The sounds of hushed conversations and laughter from the guest room where Elisa stayed were a constant reminder of the change in their relationship. Charlotte lay in bed next to Mark, feeling a distance between them that was more than just physical. Despite the awkwardness, there were moments of unexpected camaraderie. One evening, when a plumbing issue turned the kitchen into a watery mess, the three of them worked together to mop up. The shared task, the laughter over the absurdity of the situation, offered a glimpse of what Mark had envisioned, a harmonious coexistence. Yet, Charlotte couldn't shake off the feeling of being lost in a sea of change. Her conversations with Mark became strained, often circling around how they were adjusting. He was patient, constantly reassuring her of his love, but Charlotte could sense his growing frustration with her inability to fully embrace the situation. As the weeks passed, Charlotte found herself observing Elisa, trying to understand what Mark saw in her. Elisa was undeniably charming, her presence brightening up the room, her conversations always thoughtful. Charlotte sometimes caught herself laughing at Elisa's jokes or engaging in deep discussions about books they'd both read. In those moments, she saw a glimpse of a potential friendship, but the complexity of their situation made it hard to navigate. One night, lying awake next to Mark, Charlotte realized that this new reality was not just a test of her marriage, but a test of her own boundaries and beliefs. She knew she couldn't continue living in a state of uncertainty and confusion. It was time to confront her feelings and decide what she truly wanted for her future. The next step was unclear, but she knew she couldn't stay in this limbo forever. As autumn waned into winter, Charlotte found herself at a crossroads. The initial shock of Elisa's presence had dulled into a quiet undercurrent of tension and uncertainty. However, amidst the awkwardness and confusion, an unexpected development began to take shape. It started subtly, with shared cups of coffee in the morning. Elisa, always an early riser, would have a pot brewing when Charlotte stumbled into the kitchen, bleary-eyed. They'd sit at the table, sometimes in comfortable silence, sometimes chatting about trivial matters. Charlotte found herself opening up about her work, her hobbies, little pieces of her life that she hadn't realized she'd stopped sharing with Mark. One chilly evening, when Mark was working late, Elisa and Charlotte found themselves alone. Elisa, with her ever-present perceptiveness, seemed to sense Charlotte's restlessness. "Fancy a movie night?" she asked casually, her tone light but her eyes kind. Surprised by the offer, Charlotte hesitated before nodding. They settled on the couch with a comedy that Elisa had picked, and for a few hours, Charlotte found herself genuinely laughing, the weight on her chest lightening. As the days passed, these small moments with Elisa grew more frequent and comfortable. They discovered shared interests, a love for vintage fashion, a penchant for spicy food, and a mutual admiration for a particular author's work. Discussions about their favorite novels often led to deeper conversations about life, love, and the complexity of relationships. Charlotte began to see Elisa not just as Mark's other partner, but as a person with her own stories, dreams, and struggles. There was an evening when Elisa shared her journey, the challenges she'd faced in past relationships, and her reasons for choosing this unconventional path with Mark and Charlotte. It was a vulnerability that Charlotte hadn't expected, and it resonated with her, sparking a connection that went beyond their shared involvement with Mark. Meanwhile, Charlotte's relationship with Mark was evolving. Their conversations, once strained and superficial, became more open and honest. Mark noticed the budding friendship between Charlotte and Elisa, and it seemed to relieve some of the tension he had been carrying. For the first time in weeks, Charlotte felt like they were truly communicating, not just coexisting. However, the complexity of their living arrangement was never far from Charlotte's mind. There were nights when she'd lie awake, Elisa's laughter echoing from the other room where she and Mark were watching a movie, and Charlotte would feel a pang of something akin to loss. It was a reminder that their situation was far from simple, a delicate balance that could easily tip into chaos. But amid the complexity, there was growth. Charlotte found herself becoming more assertive, more aware of her needs and boundaries. She learned to express herself more openly, not just with Mark, but with Elisa too. The three of them began to navigate their relationship with a newfound understanding, each learning and adapting to the other's needs. As winter gave way to the early whispers of spring, Charlotte realized that this journey was not just about adapting to an open marriage. It was about understanding herself, exploring the depths of human relationships, and finding strength in the most unexpected of places. The road ahead was still uncertain, but Charlotte now felt equipped to face whatever came next, with a sense of hope and a newfound resilience. Spring brought with it a sense of renewal, and for Charlotte, it felt like a new chapter in her life was unfolding. The awkwardness and tension that had once permeated the house had gradually given way to a more harmonious living situation. Charlotte, Mark, and Elisa had found a rhythm to their coexistence, a delicate dance of respect, boundaries, and understanding. Charlotte noticed the subtle changes first in the mornings. The kitchen, once a place of rushed breakfasts and polite, surface-level conversations, had transformed into a space of lively discussions and shared plans for the day. Elisa's culinary experiments, which Charlotte initially viewed with skepticism, became a source of excitement and joint activities. Evenings were spent trying new recipes, the three of them working in tandem, laughing over failed baking attempts, and celebrating culinary successes. As their domestic life settled into a comfortable routine, Charlotte found that her relationship with Mark had also begun to evolve. The presence of Elisa in their lives had, paradoxically, brought her and Mark closer. They communicated more openly, discussing their feelings and concerns without the fear and hesitation that had clouded their interactions before. Mark was more attentive, and Charlotte felt heard and valued in ways she hadn't realized she had been missing. But it was her growing friendship with Elisa that surprised Charlotte the most. They had developed a bond that was entirely independent of Mark, rooted in mutual respect and genuine affection. They would often spend hours talking about everything from literature and art to their hopes and fears. Elisa had a way of encouraging Charlotte to express her inner thoughts, leading to moments of profound self-reflection and clarity. One sunny afternoon, while Mark was away on a business trip, Charlotte and Elisa decided to transform the backyard into a garden. Working side by side, digging in the earth, planting seeds, there was a sense of camaraderie and accomplishment. It was during these quiet moments of shared work that Charlotte realized how much Elisa had become a part of her life, not as a rival, but as a friend. There were still challenges, of course. Moments of jealousy and insecurity occasionally surfaced, reminding Charlotte of the unconventional nature of their arrangement. But these were now met with open discussions and reassurances, with each person committed to maintaining the delicate balance of their relationship. The trio began to venture out into the world together, attending social events as a unit. The initial wariness of their friends and acquaintances gradually gave way to acceptance as they witnessed the genuine affection and respect among the three. Charlotte, Mark, and Elisa became known for their unique but harmonious dynamic, a testament to the diversity of love and relationships. As spring turned into summer, Charlotte reflected on the journey they had all undertaken. The decision to embrace an open marriage had not been easy, but it had led to unexpected discoveries about herself, Mark, and the nature of love and relationships. The future was still uncertain, with many more challenges and learning experiences to come, but Charlotte felt a newfound sense of confidence and openness to whatever life had in store. The complexity of their situation had not diminished, but they had found a way to thrive within it, each of them growing and evolving in ways they never could have imagined. As the summer sun cast long shadows across the garden, Charlotte found herself reflecting on the past year. The journey from the initial shock of Mark's proposal to the intricate but harmonious life they now shared with Elisa had been nothing short of remarkable. It was a path paved with challenges, but also with unexpected moments of joy and self-discovery. The change in their relationship dynamics had subtly shifted the atmosphere in their home. It was no longer just a place where three individuals coexisted, it had become a sanctuary of mutual respect, understanding, and affection. Charlotte, Mark, and Elisa had not only adjusted to each other's presence but had grown to value and depend on it. One significant turning point came with an unforeseen crisis. Late in the summer, Mark fell ill, a sudden and scary episode that landed him in the hospital for several days. During this tense period, Charlotte and Elisa came together in a way that transcended their previous interactions. They supported each other, and Mark, through the anxiety and uncertainty, emerging from the experience with a deeper bond and appreciation for their unique family structure. As Mark recovered, the trio spent more time together, discussing their future. They talked openly about their arrangement, acknowledging the challenges and expressing their needs and fears. It was during these conversations that Charlotte realized how much she had changed. The insecurity and jealousy that once consumed her had given way to a feeling of empowerment and a deeper understanding of her own desires and boundaries. The summer culminated in a small celebration, an acknowledgement of their journey and the path they had chosen to walk together. Friends and family, some still skeptical, others openly supportive, gathered in their backyard, now flourishing with the garden that Charlotte and Elisa had nurtured. The gathering was a testament to the acceptance and love they had cultivated, not just among themselves, but within their wider community. As the evening drew to a close, Charlotte found herself sitting with Elisa, watching the sunset. Mark joined them, wrapping an arm around each of them. In that moment, Charlotte felt a profound sense of contentment. The future was still uncertain, the complexities of their relationship ever present, but she felt ready to face whatever came next. In the quiet of the night, after their guests had left, Charlotte, Mark, and Elisa sat together, talking about their hopes and dreams. They discussed the possibility of expanding their family, of traveling together, of building a life that continued to defy traditional norms but was deeply fulfilling for them. Charlotte realized then that her understanding of love, family, and happiness had been completely redefined. She had learned to find strength in vulnerability, joy in the unexpected, and love in its most diverse forms. The journey had not been easy, but it had been transformative. As the story of Charlotte, Mark, and Elisa continued to unfold, it was clear that their unconventional path was not just about an open marriage. It was a journey of personal growth, of challenging societal norms, and of building a life based on honesty, respect, and unconditional love. The future was a canvas of endless possibilities, and together, they were ready to paint it with the vibrant colors of their unique and extraordinary lives.